Welcome to Indus News Live from Islamabad. I'm Hira Mustafa and these are the headlines. Indian forces have martyred 5 more civilians in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. The youths were targeted during a military raid in Shopia and Islamabad districts. The occupying forces have martyred over 300 Kashmiris since revocation of the territory status on 5th of August 2019. India has yet again reported record single-day COVID-19 cases of nearly 153,000 and 5-month high deaths of over 800. In Pakistan, 114 people died while over 5,000 contracted the disease overnight. The country's death toll has surged to 15,443 while its caseload has topped 721,000. Globally, the virus has claimed over 2.9 million lives and infected more than 135 million. In Myanmar, pro-democracy activists have taken to the streets across the country a day after security forces shot dead 80 more civilians. The protesters displayed 3-finger salutes to condemn the military regime and wore black to mourn those killed. Nearly 700 protesters have been killed in the military crackdown since the February 1st coup. In Yemen, the Arab coalition says it has destroyed another Houthi drone launched towards the Saudi kingdom. The Saudi state media says the explosive-laden drone was aimed at southern city of Khamis Mushat. However, Houthis claim to have hit Jazan airport and a military airbase in Khamis Mushat with 2 drones. Well, these were the headlines. News in detail coming after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now the news in detail. Indian forces have martyred 5 more civilians in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. The number of the martyred youths in the territory has risen to 12 since Thursday. The youths were targeted during a military raid in Shopia and Islamabad districts. Earlier, Indian troops martyred 7 Kashmiris in separate cordon and search operations in Shopia and Pulwama districts. The authorities have snapped internet services in Shopia, Kulgam and Islamabad districts. Kashmiri leaders of all the parties' Hurriyat Conference have slammed the latest surge in extrajudicial killings of Kashmiris. The occupying forces have martyred over 300 Kashmiris since the revocation of the territory status on 5th of August 2019. India has yet again reported record single-day COVID-19 cases of nearly 153,000 and 5-month high deaths of over 800. Brazil and Mexico have reported more than 2,000 deaths each from COVID-19 overnight. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 2.9 million lives and infected over 135 million. Details in this report.
As the vaccine drives get stumbled due to one reason or another, the number of fatalities continues to aggressively grow. The University of Washington Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluations model has predicted around 618,000 people will have died from coronavirus in the U.S. by August 1st, meaning 100,000 more deaths in the country in less than 4 months. The situation is equally grim in the south. Peru registered a record number of nearly 400 deaths overnight as health workers battle a shortage of medical oxygen and saturated hospitals. The Archbishop of Chile's capital, Santiago, has been hospitalized after testing positive for the coronavirus. Celestino Eos had received both doses of the Sinovac vaccine. Colombia's capital, Bogota, has implemented new restrictions including a 3-day lockdown in a bid to curb the third wave. Experts warn, given the behavior of citizens, they can potentially have 3 waves of the virus every year for an indefinite period of time.
Compared with other countries in the region, we are quite behind in terms of vaccinations. We have a good network of services, one of the best in Latin America in terms of the ability to serve people. But we have undisciplined people who do not abide by the measures, so we expect the waves of contagion will follow, and we will have 2 or 3 waves per year from here, indefinitely.
Leading scientists have warned that the UK government is risking the third wave by easing the lockdown, at a time when official data still shows virus hotspots across many parts of the country. Meanwhile, France will lengthen the period between the first and second shots of messenger RNA vaccines to 6 weeks from 4 weeks to accelerate the inoculation campaign. Pressure remains acute in hospitals, transfers a precious tool for saving lives. But with hospital visits allowed, families do not want patients to be transferred to other cities.
There's a big difference between the first and second wave and now, which is that now families are authorized to visit their loved ones in hospital. I can go see him, so there's a link. So it's much more difficult to convince families to transfer patients. But still we need these transfers.
A real-world data studied in Israel has found the variant discovered in South Africa can break through Pfizer vaccine to some extent.
Pakistan has recorded 114 deaths from COVID-19 overnight, its highest single-day toll during the third wave. The health ministry says over 5,000 tested positive for the virus in the past 24 hours. The ministry said that the toll has jumped to 15,443. It said out of over 21,000 cases so far, more than 631,000 have recovered. The number of active cases now approaching 74,000, with over 4,000 in critical condition. The country's positivity ratio stands at 10.96%. In Myanmar, pro-democracy activists have taken to the streets across the country a day after security forces shot dead 82 more civilians. The protesters displayed 3-finger salutes to condemn the military regime and wore black to mourn those killed. The demonstrators also carried Eugenia as a symbol of triumph and defiance in Chiang Mai Thazi town. Calling the recent violence a genocide, protest organizers said the military is shooting even at shadows it suspects. More than 700 people have been killed by the military since the February 1st coup. In Yemen, the Arab coalition says it has destroyed another Houthi drone launched towards the Saudi kingdom. The Saudi state media says the explosive-laden drone was aimed at the southern city of Khamis Mushat. However, the Houthis claim to have hit their intended targets. In a tweet, Houthi spokesman Yahya Saria said the military targeted Jazan airport and a military airbase in Khamis Mushat with 2 drones. The Saudi-led military coalition has been battling the Houthi movement since it ousted Yemen's government in 2015. Egypt and Sudan have rejected an Ethiopian proposal to share data on the operations of its dam on the Blue Nile. This comes after the latest round of talks between the 3 countries in Kinshasa ended without progress. Sudan's irrigation ministry said Ethiopia's offer implies suspicious selectivity in dealing with what has been agreed upon. Meanwhile, in an interview, Egypt's irrigation minister said his chief concern is drought management. Addis Ababa has again invited the 2 sides to nominate dam operators for data exchange before the dam's filling. But Cairo and Khartoum say they are seeking a legally binding agreement over the dam's operations. South Korean Prime Minister Chung Sai-kyun has departed for Iran for bilateral talks. The visit comes amid lingering tensions over Tehran's call to unlock its fund frozen by Seoul under the U.S. sanctions. During the 3-day visit, Chung is scheduled to meet with Iranian First Vice President Ishaq Jahangiri. He will also hold talks with other political leadership of Iran. This is the first visit by a South Korean premier in 44 years and comes 2 days after Iran released a South Korean oil tanker. Irish Prime Minister Michael Martin has warned against a spiral back into sectarian conflict in Northern Ireland. A week-long streak of unrest continues in the country, with 14 police injured in the latest night of clashes, taking the toll to 88. The Premier said the future generations must not return to sectarian murders and political discord. Disorders sparked in pockets of Belfast, with petrol bombs being hurled at police officers. Violence has erupted over growing frustration among pro-British unionists on post-Brexit trade barriers. Parts of the region remain deeply split 23 years after the Good Friday peace deal. Many nationalists aspire to unify with Ireland, while unionists want to stay in the United Kingdom. Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan has called for an end to the escalations in eastern Ukraine. Erdogan says Ankara desires the Black Sea to be peaceful, tranquil, and an area of cooperation. In a press briefing with the Ukrainian counterpart, Erdogan said Turkey is ready to provide any necessary support for peace in Donbass. The Turkish president raised alarm over developments in the area. Erdogan voiced support for Ukraine's territorial integrity while reaffirming Ankara's stance of not recognizing the annexation of Crimea. For his part, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said the positions of Kiev and Ankara coincided on threats in the Black Sea. Zelensky added he briefed Erdogan in detail on developments in Donbass. The head of the leading faction of the EU Parliament has called for tougher sanctions against Russia if the situation in eastern Ukraine worsens. In an interview, European People's Party head Manfred Weber alleged Russia continues the course of dangerous provocations. Weber said Russia's strengthening of military muscle around Ukraine is a test for the West. He said large-scale freezing and disconnection of Russia from SWIFT accounts should become a real option. Weber further argued that Russia's recent Nord Stream 2 project cannot be justified under any circumstances. In Kyrgyzstan, voting in a referendum is underway to choose between a presidential or parliamentary system of governance. Independent polls reveal voters are likely to support handing greater powers to the presidency. The constitution reform will make regional policy execution for Kyrgyz President Sadyr Japarov easier. Neighboring Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan also have presidential systems. The verdict will become a constitutional obligation only if the turnout in the referendum is over 30%. In Serbia, thousands have protested outside the parliament in Belgrade against the government's inaction to prevent pollution. With banners in their hands, the demonstrators came to Belgrade from across the country. Protest leader Alexander Jovanovic told the crowd that investors are welcome in the country, but they cannot poison children. In recent years, Serbia has started selling its mining resources to foreign companies, despite opposition by the locals. As it seeks to join the EU, Serbia will need billions of euros of investment to meet the bloc's environmental standards. More news stories coming up after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. In China, 29 miners have been trapped in a coal mine that flooded in northwest China's Xinjiang region. State media says so far 8 of them have been rescued uninjured. They said all the trapped miners have been located and a rescue operation is underway. The flooding occurred when the Fenjuan mine was undergoing a technological upgrade. Local authorities said the accident has cut off power and communication systems, which has complicated the rescue operation. In Ecuador, voters are set to cast their ballot in the presidential runoff today. This comes amid longing debate whether the country's economic issues can be best treated through socialism or market-friendly policies. The nationwide ballot distribution took place under the careful watch of the military. Pre-runoff polls indicate socialist Andres Arauz with a lead over his rival and free market advocate Guillermo Lasso. Arauz won the first-round election in February with 32.7% of the vote. A victory for him now will further consolidate a string of leftist electoral victories in South America. In Peru, ballots are being distributed in polling stations as the country prepares to vote for a new president. But the COVID-19 pandemic has diminished the usual buzz surrounding the elections. This report has the details.
Peru battles the peak of COVID-19 cases with hospitals overwhelmed. Moreover, the voting comes in the wake of last year's constitutional crisis and political scandals. Ballots were distributed amid tight security by the National Police Force.
The National Police is providing the security escort of the trucks that are going to distribute the electoral material. Each truck is escorted with a patrol car. Each truck is escorted with a patrol car with its respected crew. In order to accompany them, provide security during transportation and security during distribution of this electoral material in each of the polling stations.
As candidates close their campaigns, pollsters say half a dozen of them are still in the running for the top 2 spots. The government has mobilized massive machinery to ensure the elections are held smoothly.
200 trucks are leaving these premises, accompanied by 200 patrol cars. We are sending 20 trucks to Callao, 180 trucks to Lima's metropolitan area to transport the material during the next 12 hours, constantly to 3,000 polling stations. In total, we are mobilizing 450 tons of material.
In the final pre-election polls, Keiko Fujimori, the daughter of ex-president Alberto Fujimori, has climbed to the top. But pollsters say voters were disenchanted with all candidates, giving rise to more radical positions.
In Iraq, Mosul's largest Al Rabia theater still lies in ruins, even after 4 years of liberation from ISIS. But over the past few weeks, local volunteers have worked to remove dust and debris from the theater. More in this report.
Mosul's cultural and artistic life had always been part of the city's identity. Therefore, volunteers are playing their due role in reviving art in the vibrant city. Sponsored by local radio, the Watar Orchestra is the first of its kind to exist in years in Mosul. It is composed of youth from the Ninwa province's different religious groups.
Without a doubt, Mosul nowadays needs, for instance, this stage, this theater. That is important for the city of Mosul, so that the artistic life, history, and artistic as well as creative identity of Nineveh returns at the present time, after the end of the most dangerous battle of our modern times.
It held its first concert titled The Art and Soul of Mosul in front of a packed audience. The orchestra performed a series of traditional and folkloric musical pieces, some of them from Mosul itself.
We, the administration of the Water Orchestra and of Radio Al-Ghad, decided to have our premiere in the ruins of Al Rabia Theatre to give a message to the world that this city is a city of culture. The city of this theatre represents and is part of the soul of the people from Mosul.
Many who attended Watar Orchestra's performance witnessed an event at a public theatre for the first time in their life. The orchestra now hopes to grow and perform in different parts of the country.
Egypt has unveiled a recently discovered city in Luxor. The discovery of the lost city has given an interesting insight into the daily lives of the people of the Golden Age. Details in this report.
An ancient Egyptian city buried under sands for 3 millennia has been unearthed by archaeologists. Renowned Egyptologist Zahi Hawass and his team began searching for a mortuary temple near Luxor in September, but ended up finding the mud brick formations of the lost city, having been only partly excavated. It is presumably the largest ancient city to be ever uncovered in Egypt. Archaeologists are optimistic that further important finds would be revealed from the discovery.
We believe that this golden lost city is the most important discovery after the discovery of the tomb of Tutankhamun. I call it golden because it was found in the golden age of Egypt, 1391 BC. I called it lost city because it was lost. No one really believed that the city could exist here.
The well-preserved city has almost complete walls and rooms filled with daily life tools along with rings, scarabs, and colored pottery vessels. Archaeologists say the discovery sheds light on the beginning of the worship of the ancient god Aten.
The discovery of this city has given us insight into the daily lives of ancient Egyptians. We've always believed that ancient Egyptian culture was one of death and resurrection. But now we know these details about the lives of the ancient Egyptian. We found containers that were for aged meat. We found items that have given us the history of this area belonging to Amenhotep III. And this is where the worship of Aten began, before the worship of Akhenaten. And this changes history. This discovery is important for Egyptian history because it adds volumes to Egypt's history.
According to historical references, the site once housed three of Amenhotep III's palaces and the empire's administrative and industrial center. The Ninth Pharaoh's empire from 1386 to 1349 BC stretched from the Euphrates River in modern Iraq and Syria to Sudan.
A third lava stream has opened in a volcano in Reykjanes Peninsula of Iceland after 3 weeks of continuous eruption. Iceland hosts some of the world's most volcanically active hotspots, but this one is unusual in its proximity to the main population center. It is located some 30 kilometers southwest of the country's capital, Reykjavik. Volcanologists have no idea how long the eruption will continue, saying it could stop soon or continue for possibly decades. Elon Musk's company Neuralink has enabled a monkey to use a computer after a brain chip implantation. Details in this report.
Never seen a monkey play a video game. Watch Pager, who uses a joystick to follow a cursor on a screen. Neuralink implanted chips in more than 2,000 electrodes in the monkey's motor cortex that coordinates hand and arm movements. The device records and decodes electrical signals from the brain. The monkey moves the joystick out of habit, even after the scientists have unplugged it. Pager controls the cursor entirely with decoded neural activity. The company intends to expand its technology to help people with neurological disorders and disabilities. In August 2020, it unveiled a pig with a Neuralink chip installed, describing it as a Fitbit in your skull.
Now it's time to have a look at the weather update across the globe. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.